Blake, hey, it's awesome to see you again.
Always a pleasure, Dom. Good to see you as well.
Yeah, no, really excited to dig into our podcast and video for today, and it's going to be a continuation of what we kicked off, in our last video, which is specifically in regards to the topic of benchmarking. I mean, there's so many different aspects to it. It can be very overwhelming and hard to understand, like exactly what to look for. The types of documents you need to pull up, and we're actually going to be in today's video going through a live example and just some of the opportunity that can come through this process. So. With that, really excited to get into it. But before we do, Blake, tell me a little bit more about, some of the components of this that you're excited about.
Absolutely. Well, to your point, we dove in on our last episode about, what is a benchmark and why you should benchmark. So I think what I'm excited is to actually give the viewer what a benchmark looks like. And we did label certain areas of a benchmark. So
Yep.
for this episode, we're going to dive in on the fees perspective.
Yep.
Now, Dom, you and I both know it's not always about costs, even though secretly it is. But no, seriously, big key to benchmarking your plan is making sure it's up to industry standards and fees.
Yep.
So what we're going to be looking at and showing the viewers on what you should be asking for is a fee disclosure. Fair warning, you and I have both been doing this over a decade. I still look at fee disclosures today, and it takes me a couple minutes to just digest what I'm even reading. Yeah. So for our sponsors out there and our HR teams that handle 401ks and retirement plans, you're not alone. Even if you pull a 408B2, spoiler alert, fee disclosure, you may be able to get it. And that's really just the first step, Dom, right? The next step is actually being able to read it and digest it. So we're hoping with this episode, you can follow along. Again, all vendors are different too. So just because we show you this one doesn't mean it's going to look the same for your current plan. But it's important to see what you can find out in a fee benchmark, right?
Totally. Yeah. No, I mean, for me as an advisor coming into this, and I'm a total 401k and finance nerd. Like, It's always this puzzle to kind of understand. Like, okay, what do we have? What are we missing? How do we get what we need? And like piecing all these pieces together to make sure that the plan is being optimized. That you as an organization are offering the best quality you can to the participants. And ultimately. Time and time again, I find that, going through this process, there's so many different ways to optimize the technology, improve the cost, like, opportunities within the fund lineup to help improve outcomes. So there's just, so much opportunity in going through this process.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, not all vendors are the same, but what we're going to be pulling up is what we call in the industry a 408B2, and that's B as in boy or B as in Blake, number 2. And really what it does is it outlines what your plan is paying. Now, not necessarily always on the participant level, but what does this retirement plan cost our company? Now, my favorite adage I hear all the time, Dominic, and you've heard it one too many times, is when you're talking to a prospect or a client that has an existing plan, they typically lean on, well, I don't think we pay anything for our 401k, right? How often have you heard that?
Yeah, no, I mean, that is nails on a chalkboard for me. So, yeah.
And that's right? It's like, okay, well, maybe you don't cut a check for the plan, but we're a card-carrying capitalist country.
Yeah.
No one does anything for free with any type of service. Totally. So when we look at this live example here, you'll see that maybe you're not cutting a check, but you're paying fees for that plan.
Absolutely. And Blake, you mentioned something important, and that is specifically the 408B2 fee disclosure. Now, in this specific instance, I actually went on to the plan sponsor website with the client. We did a screen share together, and we were dating all throughout the website. And I'm like, this is what it's called. Like, where can we find this? And so we looked around everywhere.
Right.
Turns out, for this specific record keeper, you had to actually reach out and request it. So, if you're digging around and going to your, plan sponsor website and your 401k plan and you're not finding the 408B2 fee disclosure, it may not actually be there. But legally, record keepers are required to be able to provide this upon request. So if you're not finding it, you might just have to reach out to the contact at record keeper, right? And then moreover, in this specific example, we did pare down the amount of content. So your 408B2, fee disclosure, it might be 20 plus pages, but and today we're highlighting very specific components of it because it does underline, key things that we need to be looking for.
And that's such a great point to highlight, Dominic, because every vendor names it something different, right? The legal term for the plan level is the 408B2, but vendors out there are allowed to call it whatever they want. And I think we've also seen a change in the last 5-ish years to where they don't want to make it easily accessible for their clients because now they can shop it whenever they want, right? So to your point, not every vendor posts the fee disclosure. You may have to request it. So I'm glad you highlighted that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And if you go through this process and you find that maybe there's other record keepers that might be a little bit less expensive, like the solution is not always to move the plan. Sometimes you can go back to the
Good point.
keeper and work with them to renegotiate pricing. So as you begin this endeavor, if you're not in a financial position, you're a capacity position, I should say, to be able to track the process and move and change record keepers, that is totally okay. It's still very much worth doing because ultimately the best outcome might be just staying where you're at and renegotiating pricing with your existing record keeper.
And even to add on that, I feel like we just keep adding on to it, but it's all important stuff.
Totally.
I think just hearing you talk through it, and that's also why they can hire you as a 401k advisor is, hey, just give me access to talk on your behalf. I'll do the benchmark. I'll find out what the current provider maybe is willing to go down to. And I'll also get you some market proposals as well to show you what your plan size would be paying today in the market. So to your point, a lot of our HR teams and plan sponsors are like, anytime they hear 401k, that's nails on a chalkboard to them, right? They don't want to spend any more time than they need to. But that's where using us and bringing you in can really alleviate a lot of that pain and make sure that they're getting those industry standards on their plan.
Yeah, absolutely. There's in this process, as we talk through it, it might sound a bit overwhelming, but in reality, a good retirement plan specialist is going to take on a huge portion of the workload and a huge, portion of that overall responsibility and help you understand and organize the findings so you can make, a high quality decision. So, it's not going to be as cumbersome, as you may expect.
Yep. But so now let's dive into this one, right? So I actually remember working this one with you, Dominic, and this wasn't an existing client for you. It was a prospect, but obviously you reached out, you spoke with them, and you talked a little bit about what your services are, and even being able to give that free benchmark. Yep. And I think you had mentioned like, hey, the fee disclosure, I have the fee disclosure. Let's talk through it. And you saw that was about $2.5 million. And I don't think the plan has ever moved, or maybe there was a couple vendors way back, but that's a key point too. Is like a $2.5 million plan is priced a lot different than if they had set this plan up at zero and they just had the same provider for the last 5 years, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Whenever I hear that a plan has not been moved within, 3 to 5 years and they haven't done any sort of benchmarking work, like to me, I know there's going to be massive opportunities because oftentimes the overall demographics of the plan has changed. The assets within the 401k plan has changed. The participant count has changed. And so if the pricing isn't being updated on a ongoing basis to adjust for those things, then, you might be, not as competitive in terms of the overall pricing. And so, the more I discussed, with, the plan sponsor or the client, as, talking about the plan, the more I was able to realize, there's going to be some really amazing opportunities to optimize, the plan benefit here.
Absolutely. So you dive in, and again, Dominic, you mentioned it's a great point. We took snippets of this actual fee disclosure. They're not all going to be 3 pages or a nice a couple highlights for you, but as you can see on this first screen that Dominic has up, they do a good job of breaking down where are the all-in fees, right? So you can see, okay, payments to investment providers, aka where is the money being invested and how much are those funds charging your participants to be in those investments? That's coming into about 0.39%. So just a little under 0.5%. Then the key payments to record keeper, look at that, 1%. So that's in addition to what the underlying mutual funds are costing. The vendor is also charging 1%. And that's on plan assets. That in an annual perspective was almost $26,000. So correct, you're not cutting a check for that. But all your employees that have balances have pro rata paid that $26,000 across their balances on top of the underlying investments. And then they throw in the third, which could mean anything, Dom, right? Payments to others. Well, what does that even imply? Well, I don't know, but that's still another $11,000, which is a 0.43%. So you add up all that as an annual percentage, and you're currently paying for this plan at that current vendor 1.82%. Now they also get a little sneaky, as you can see, and they say, well, there's actually some reimbursements, which, again, fee disclosures, all these vendors hire great legal teams to write all their contracts to kind of CYA for the vendor. But it does look like they offer some type of credits because of the investments that the employees are in. So all in, they do show that crediting, but they do show the all-in cost as a 1.57%. Now, I'm sure you're thinking and you're reading along like, okay, but investment providers, record keeper, others, what does that actually entail? What is this 1%? What is this 0.39%? So as you scroll through your fee disclosure, they'll actually break it down for you as you go through it. So maybe Dominic, touch on the investment providers and what they're showing.
Yeah, no, totally. And so when we look at the investment menu, one of the important things to factor into account is the different share classes. So one of the things that Blake mentioned was revenue sharing. So within the different mutual funds within the investment menu, oftentimes there's what's called, again, different share classes. And so there's going to be different levels of expense associated with the different share classes. And depending on the share class you're in, that fund might have what's called some revenue sharing, meaning that they charge a higher percentage, but they credit a portion of that expense back to the retirement plan and back to the record keeper. And so the record keeper has an opportunity to help, provide some credits to help offset some of the expenses. So, it does get a little bit more complicated. And that being said, looking at, the investment menu, there's a couple of really important components to it. So we need to be filtering in and, looking at not only the breadth and the scope of funds which are being offered, we want to make sure that we're offering a sufficient number of funds for your participants to make a high quality investment menu or investment portfolio for themselves to be able to achieve their retirement. But we also want to, be looking at, are we providing the least expensive share class to participants, right? So
Totally.
We'll go through a specific example here, which, was, kind of, interesting, we'll just say. So, we can see within this investment menu, I'm going to take a look at the Empower S&P 500 index fund. So the term index fund, is often perceived as being, lower cost, and you're just, buying the overall index. Now, in this particular instance, this index fund was, charging 51 basis points, roughly 0.5%. I would be willing to venture that if you look at the investment menu with this record keeper in the list of available funds that could have gone in the menu, there's probably going to be a BlackRock or a Vanguard S&P 500 index fund, which is going to be a fraction of that cost.
Literally a fraction.
Yeah, exactly. So maybe a handful of basis points as opposed to 0.5%, right? So when you're looking at the investment menu, like, we not only want to be offering high quality investments, good performing funds, but again, looking at, hey, is there a more attractive option that's going to be less expensive and produce an overall better outcome because they're not charging quite as much.
Totally. And then to your point, in this specific S&P 500 index funds, which you look at any other, you Google institutional no revenue sharing S&P 500 fund, you're coming in anywhere between 1 and 3 basis points, 1 and 3, not 51. On top of that, you'll see in this column admin, there's a 35 basis point wrap as well. So for a fund that should only charge about 1 to 3 basis points, you could be looking at 51 to 85 basis points you're paying on that. And that's pretty substantial. Yeah. And again, maybe you're not cutting a check to the provider, but you're paying that from your employees' accounts that ultimately hinders their retirement nest egg.
Totally.
So that's the investment providers. Obviously, there's some sneakiness with the revenue sharing, as you mentioned, but in their defense, they do credit back to the plan if they're making too much money on it, right? I don't know if that's exactly how they calculate it, but they do give back revenue.
Yeah.
But as you scroll down, they'll break down how did they get that investment provider fees, right? But they're also going to show, as you scroll, what were those payment to others, right? So here you'll see that the plan had a third-party administrator getting almost 10 basis points, 0.0999%. They had custodial services. Was there ever a conversation about needing that service, and what does that entail? Another 25 basis point expense on the plan assets, and then you add in another fee for participant advice, that's outrageous from a payment to others perspective. And then
Right.
we learned that there wasn't really any advice. There was no advisor on the plan giving any type of advice, right?
Right.
So now as you go back and obviously please rewatch the video, you'll see the three different key areas that we hit on in the beginning. They'll break out how they got to those totals.
Yeah.
But again, all in, it was coming around, I think it said what, 1.57%, which was like $47,000.
And the amazing thing about this is we were able to take this plan, shop it out, get significantly improved pricing, and we basically cut the fees in half. And now they have the support of an advisor to help them manage the fund lineup, support their participants with questions, help the trustees of the retirement plan with the annual reviews, the due diligence work that comes with managing a plan prudently. So it was just really an amazing outcome.
Bingo. And that's the key. I think it was almost close to a 1% savings on $2.5 million. You're saving 1%, but you were adding in Dominick as a local advisor. You were bringing my services. I know they already had a TPA, but a local third-party administrator in. Not only, and again, I like to say it's not always about fees, but 1% is pretty significant on $2.5 million.
Yeah.
So with a proper benchmark and then getting us the fee disclosures, we were able to really show a client, like, it's easy to say it when you're talking to someone, like, I think there's some savings, but then you show the decision makers and the HR teams that you're paying 1% more than you need to for a lot less service. That's significant. And then that was the key to this exercise, is that these documents are available. They are required per the law to get into your hands when you sign up with these vendors. Don't just think because you're not sending a check or you're not cutting any invoices that you're not paying anything for your plan. And again, this was at $2.5 million when you looked at it. For anybody, it doesn't have to be $2.5 million. You could be at $1 million. You could be at $500,000. But if you set your plan up on day one at 0 assets and you haven't looked at that thing in 3 to 5 years, 6 years, you don't necessarily have to be at $2.5 million. But wherever you've gone to, I'm sure there's significant savings. Totally. Now, again, not all about cost, because you were still able to come in and now be an advisor, be there for employees. But this is substantial. So as our viewers looking at this, keep that in mind. I mean, we're not asking you to watch this and then go grab your fee disclosure and send it to us. But it is important to be cognizant about it, right? Because it is out there. Vendors will overcharge unless you say something, right? So keep an eye on this. But this is, again, if you feel like, oh, this is all great, I don't really want to spend time on this, though, you don't have to. Yeah, give Dominick a call. He'll take care of it for you.
Yeah, no, it was fun for me to see their reaction. So yeah, I went through this and they had before. And I'm like, okay, well, so here's how your current plan stacks up. And then, I received bids from other record keepers, and like, it was just an absolute no-brainer. He's like, yeah,
what am I doing?
It's super cool to see. So tons of opportunity. And if this falls on your plate in terms of responsibilities, again, you're not having to be the one to do all the heavy lifting. Like, leverage a quality retirement plan specialist, and we'll make your life so much easier in this process.
Absolutely. And that's why we're here. This is what we do every day. So give us a call if you're not too sure on how to track this down, if you have questions. And the nice thing, I always tell Dominick, he's too generous, but he doesn't charge to give you a benchmark. So as he should, but no, excited. And this is powerful, right? So hopefully the viewers got something out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, awesome. Well, great show today, Blake.
Yeah, always. Thank you, Dom.
Yeah, no, thank you. And as you all can tell, like, this kind of stuff gets us excited. So don't afraid to reach out and leverage our knowledge and expertise.
Absolutely. Thanks, Dominick. Thanks, everybody.
All right. We'll see y'all next time.